This one is just a continuation of our discussion on the topics that are under Unit 2. So Lesson 2 talks about water, the medium of life. Now, as we all know, water is considered as the universal solvent and is very essential for the perpetuation of life on Earth. Without further ado, let's proceed to our learning objectives. So at the end of the lesson, the students are expected to, number 1, explain why water is considered as the medium of life. Second one, discuss the origin of water formation on Earth. And the last one, enumerate the uses of water. Alright. Hydrosphere. So from the word hydro, that pertains to water. The water environment on Earth is known as the hydrosphere. The hydrosphere includes all of Earth's water. So this Earth's water can be in a form of water vapor, liquid water, an ice, or any bodies of water just like the ocean, lakes, rivers, and marshes. Even clouds, snow, glaciers, and rain are also part of hydrosphere. So the bodies of water class are divided into either salt water or fresh water based on salinity. Kasi nga, itong dalawang klase ng tubig differs according to their salt concentration. Si salt water, malaking percentage or kanang daghan siya salt water content daghan siya salt content compared sa fresh water na minimal lang or konti lang na traces ng salt ang nasa iya. Alright. So salt water, which includes the ocean and seas, primarily have high salt content. As we all know naman, itong salt water, they are really composed of certain amount of salt. Kaya nga, itong salt water, they are usually maaalat. So the ocean, or most of the saltwater bodies, houses many species of marine life and diverse mineral resources. So maraming nabubuhay na mga marine diversity na ato makita diri sa salt water just like the oceans and seas. Aside from that class, there are also a lot of organisms that depends on saltwater for survival, such as the saltwater fishes and other marine invertebrates. And these saltwater fishes and any other form of marine invertebrates serves as our primary source of protein. And aside from the protein nga itong makuha ani ng mga living things, they also provide us with iodine, which is very essential for our development and for staying our thyroid hormone balance and keeping us away from goiter or any other thyroid problems. So that is the first classification of water. Now the second one is the fresh water. So from the word itself, fresh, so that means tama-tama lang ang salt content niya. That is why it doesn't really mean nga pag fresh water, it does not have salt. Instead, ang freshwater class, naagya po na siya small amount of salt, but in very low concentration. So freshwater, it has 0 to very little salt content. So naagya po salt content ang fresh water, but it's just that very minute na. Gamay ra kayang percentage or gamay ra kayo ang tanay numbers of salt nga nasa fresh water. Fresh water can be in a form of rain and snow, and it can be found in permanently frozen soil such as permafrost. So itong mga permafrost class, they're also considered fresh water. And this permafrost can be seen in most Antarctic region, or yung ang ground good nila, or apil na yung anang ginatubuan sa ilang mga grasses or sa ilang mga bush and mga flowers, ano na po siya, ice. So that means they are also considered as fresh water. So fresh water, they are commonly stored in rivers, the streams, ponds, lakes, marshes, glaciers, and polar caps. So by just mentioning all of those categories or classifications of freshwater, di ba maka-observe jud po ta nga kadto sila, they are not salty, dili sila parat, tama-tama lang ang ilahang taste if naka ano na mo ato nila, and that makes them different from the salt water classification. Kasi nga yung mga salt water, just like the oceans and bodies, they have a very high amount of salt content. So let us take a look on the global fresh water. It is proposed that 2.5% of the Earth's water are fresh water, while 97.5% are salt water. So that means maraming mga maalat na tubig ang present sa atong planet compared sa fresh water. Now, this fresh water are further subdivided into other types of fresh water, and these are the glacier, the groundwater, and the lakes and rivers. So for the glaciers, they comprise of at least 68.9% of the fresh water. On the other hand, 30.8% belongs to groundwater, and 0.3% belongs also to lakes and rivers. So, among these three classification of fresh water, ang desirable rigid class na mainom sa mga tao is the ground water. Mao ni siya kasagaran kanang naa sa ato ang balloon or tubig nga gikan sa bomba or kanang sa atong water pump. So, mao ni siya ang ginatawag nato og ground water. And they are potable for drinking, or they are accepted for human consumption. Alright, now let's take a look at the properties of water. So, meron ding properties ang water class. And we have here two properties. The first one is density. The second one is the heat capacity. Density refers to kanang kabugaton sa isa ka object as relates to its mass and its volume. So water is at maximum density at 3.98 degrees Celsius. So that means water is densest or bugat ang water class when the temperature is on 3.98 degrees Celsius and is less dense at freezing temperature. Now, this explains why ice floats on the surface of liquid water, because ice has a lower density. Ice insulates the underlying liquid and prevents the liquid from further freezing. Because if ice will sinks and when frozen, then surface of the liquid water will freeze and then sink again. Kaya dili man pud pwede class nga ang sa tawagan ng ang water ano kung dali ra pud siya ma-ice, and the reason nga dili pod possible na mag-exist ang other organism kung ang density sa water kay kuan siya kanang less dense siya compared sa solid formation or solid form niya, which is the ice. Now, the second properties of water is the heat capacity. Water has a relatively high heat capacity which enables it to resist temperature changes. And heat capacity class, it is applicable for, of course, our bodies of water. Kaya dili man pumampod pwede nga ang water, dali ra siya dali ra siya mo react sa temperature on its surroundings because it would harm the marine life nga naanag po sa ato ang salt water. So when we talk about heat capacity, it pertains to the ability of the water to resist. So bali dili siya dali mo react sa heat or sa temperature changes sa iyang surroundings. Instead, hinanay or unanay good or ano bang tawag doon? Hinay-hinay siya. Dili jud siya pina-abrupt nga init. Dili po siya pina-abrupt nga bugnaw. Parang in a slow process jud iya ha. And that what makes water capable to support any other living things. Basta always remember class, the properties of water, the basic properties of water are the density and the heat capacity. Okay, so let's proceed to the next slide. So these properties make aquatic habitats a stable place for organisms to live in, since aquatic habitats can somewhat resist temperature changes. Diba, if we compare on a beach, tayo mag-strolling ta sa beach, diba, we can really observe that in a very hot summer days, the sand, they usually adapt or they quickly change in temperature. Mas init ang surface sa sand compared sa salt water or sa dagat. Same thing also with cooling. So during night or at night time, the sand also quickly releases those heat coming from the sun, while the oceans, they take this process slowly. So slowly sila or dili sila pina-gradual jud mo release sa heat or dili pud sila pina-abrupt pud mo capture sa heat, kay naa sila gina-maintain na or naa sila certain point in which their atom is capable only of absorbing this temperature or this type of heat, ingana. And that what makes our water unique. Alright, so the origin of water. So the prevailing hypothesis on the origin of water on Earth suggests that water came from comets that collided with Earth. So it was believed that class nga water does not come naturally on the Earth's surface. Instead, it came from the outer surface in a form of comets that hits the surface of the Earth. Other studies also suggest that water was already present within Earth since formation as volatiles trapped in magma. So it explains or there are also studies nga nagsuggest nga ang water daw present na jud daw na siya daan sa Earth. Wala dili siya gikan sa sa ato ang outer space, instead na daw siya sulod sa Earth or sa Earth's surface, which is created during kanang volcanic eruption or kanang naay movement of magma, kay since mga ma-move man ng mga tectonic plates and the crustal plates and the oceanic plates, so naa daw mga water or naa daw certain liquid na mo flow in every movements ani nila, which leads to the creation of the groundwater or any other types of water na present sa Earth. So here are the global water usage. So this orange one, this presents the industrial use of the water. The green one presents the domestic use or yung kanang ginagamit na siya sa kanang animal production. Then this blue one is for the agricultural use or yung mga pagtatanim, pag-produce og isa ka product. So that is on the totality of the global water usage in the whole world. So if we compared between the low and middle income countries and the high income countries, the high income countries class, they use 59% of the water for its industrial use. So bali gamay lang yang ginagamit na tubig for the industrial. And that's because these high-income countries have very high-end technology which lessens the use of water. And aside from that, kanang dili na pud kaya nila need ang water during the process. However, mas dako sila og water consumption sa ilang agricultural use. That's because high-income countries, they tend to utilize all of the resources para na sila ma-export or para na sila ma-support sa ilahang growing population. Tapos itong green or itong 11%, this one belongs to the domestic use. So for the low and the middle income countries, a large part of its water was used for industrial or different industry. It's like mga manufacturing, sa pa ba? Basta daghan ka mga, basta nag-involve ang mga buildings, mga machines, ingana. Tapos ang 10% lang, gamay lang ilang ginagamit na tubig for its agricultural use. Tapos 8% lang din ang ginagamit nila for its domestic business. Okay. Let us proceed with the key points. Hydrosphere is the water environment of the Earth. Manamantaan niyo. So salt water has a significant amount of salt content dissolved in. So meron silang malalak or there is a large amount of salt content on this type of water compared to fresh water which has a 0 to minimal salt amount dissolved in. Tapos only 2.5% of water on Earth is fresh water. Okay. Alright. So that would end our discussion for the lesson 2.